like to move a motion that gender-based intimate partner violence be given priority.
Nova Scotia MLAs address rising rates of domestic violence.
Well, a maritime winter, for me, extends all the way into the month of March.
Halifax feels the chill of a cold snap. A weather expert has the frosty forecast.
Poetry is ultimately emotion given intellectual shape.
And 5 poets break into song. We've got a festive night of music and poetry.
This is The Signal.
We have a fun show planned for you this week, but before we get rolling, we'd like to take a minute to stand against hate.
This week, 2 local Halifax businesses that are pro-LGBT were vandalized with hateful graffiti.
A sex shop on Barrington called Venus Envy wrote they were vandalized with, quote, an unsettling and harmful anti-trans statement. Venus Envy's Instagram page also had images, including a button that says protect trans kids. The shop also says we must fight against all injustices.
The Glitter Bean Cafe on Spring Garden Road says it faced similar vandalism recently, with graffiti that read, quote, this business supports child grooming, in a post to their Instagram. Glitter Bean wrote, trans existence is not some elaborate plot to indoctrinate children. The cafe added that gender-affirming care is often life-saving.
StatsCan reports a more than 6-fold increase in hate crimes over the past 5 years in Nova Scotia. The Signal stands against homophobia, transphobia, and hate in all forms.
The Standing Committee on the Health set their new agenda this week at the Nova Scotia Legislature.
That agenda included domestic violence. The problem led MLAs from all 3 parties to put aside their differences. Mark Pirro reports.
Good afternoon. Call the meeting to order.
Members of the Nova Scotia Health Committee met to discuss a new agenda for the upcoming legislature. One of the topics was gender-based violence.
I'd like to move a motion that gender-based intimate partner violence be given priority as the first topic for the Standing Committee on Health.
Liberal MLA Ian Rankin introduced the topic. It got support from both NDP and PC parties.
We support this. We're obviously in an epidemic of gender-based violence, and we need to have a multidisciplinary approach to addressing the issue.
I think this is one good moments in government where we reflect of the urgency issue.
Domestic abuse in Nova Scotia were lower than the national average in 2023. 338 incidents per 100,000 compared with 354 across Canada. Cases with female victims rose from just over 2,200 in 2019 to more than 2,400 cases in 2021. Out of 172 femicides across Canada, 7 happened in Nova Scotia. Rankin also proposed the committee include victims as meeting witnesses.
We were reminded of the death of Paula Gallant with a new book that came out, so I asked for the author, her sister, to come and share that lived experience.
Tuesday's meeting made it clear that much more action needs to be taken by the province on the issue of gender-based violence. Mark Pirro, The Signal, Halifax.
Food insecurity affects thousands of Nova Scotians.
Gabrielle Drapeau reports on 2 community groups trying to fight it. February has been a cold month.
But how cold exactly? Jack Sponigal was on the ground talking to people in Halifax.
We're at the halfway mark of African Heritage Month, and big names in the arts community gathered to celebrate at Halifax Central Library.
Poet George Eliot Clark presented an event called 5 Poets Breaking into Song. Laura Flight was there.
You have said, be we bold, giving me my claim. I love you, woman.
Poetry is the language of the gods. And no matter what you might consider divinity to be, divinity speaks in the language of poetry. And then religion comes along and messes it all up by pretending that the words spoken as poetry are somehow law. And they are not necessarily.
Maybe we marched it or maybe we prayed it, but the arc of the universe always is weighted to justice.
And as beings who depend to a certain extent on magical thinking to survive and get through and to honor ancestors, we like to believe that we can transcend mortality. And poetry and literature and language is one of the devices that we have developed as human beings that gives us a sense that we can transcend our mortality, that we can live beyond our own time.
Don't make me wait too long for slavery and the devil to get me behind me.
Well, first of all, George Eliot Clark, he sends me a batch of poems from a given poet to choose from. So he gives me a bit of liberty. He puts a little star by the ones he prefers that I do. I don't always listen to them, but I'm really looking for a poem just to start with that feels like it needs to be set to music. Not every poem equally needs it. Some of them freestanding, some of them are poetry itself. When something leaps out at me or affects me emotionally, then I dive right in. And it just depends on the poem, the process from that point on. But I will say that I take my cues in terms of the style of the piece, the musical direction of it.
African cultures depended a lot on memory and on song, chant, particularly for recording the history of the people, the history of the tribe. And so these became early forms of orature. Once colonialism took hold, we were denied access to written script. And so that made orature that much more important as a way to communicate.
In the past, and finally I can truly breathe.
Sorry folks, we had some technical difficulties. We're back now with the rest of our show.
Food insecurity affects thousands of Nova Scotians.
Gabrielle Japot reports on 2 community groups trying to fight it.
We got a tour of the first food centre in Atlantic Canada. The North Grove Food Centre opened in Dartmouth in 2015 to address local food security.
We have 4 community meals every week, so a place where people can come in, sit down, be served at a table, and share a meal with their family or friends or strangers, people that they're getting to know. We also have a weekly affordable produce market. We have a lot of food skills programs where people of all ages can learn to cook. And then we're very fortunate as well to have a farm outside.
She says food insecurity is when somebody does not have consistent, reliable access to food that is safe, healthy, and culturally appropriate.
We hear a lot about, people might spend their income on paying their rent and then not have money left over to pay for food for their family.
In 2022, Feed Nova Scotia reported more than 1 in 5 Nova Scotians were food insecure. Over 2/3 were from the Black and Indigenous communities. Horn named another barrier.
We still have places in the city where you can't, you can't walk to a grocery store, you can't necessarily walk to a food bank, so that's a challenge for people.
On the other side of the harbour, the Loaded Ladle does what it can to support food insecure students. They serve free meals 4 times a week.
So when I first got here to Dow, I personally was struggling with food security issues, and so I was relying very heavily on the Ladle for all of my meals throughout the week. I think a lot of students understand how important this is, and a lot of students are faced with these issues themselves. And so having these resources right on campus, right in the center of campus, is really huge.
At the North Grove, Laura says they nourish more than just bodies.
Anything that we can do to strengthen communities, to create thriving communities where people are looking out for each other is really important. I really feel like, having places where people can come to share food together, but really to feel connected to each other is vitally important in our communities.
Gabrielle Drapeau, The Signal, Halifax.
February has been a cold month.
But how cold exactly? Jack Sponigal was on the ground talking to people in Halifax.
It has been a cold winter here in Halifax. From the freezing cold wind to the large amounts of snow on the ground. And frankly, Haligonians are getting tired of it.
There's a lot more snow this year, Usually like last year I only saw a couple centimeters. So we're getting a lot more and it's a lot colder.
I was actually pretty surprised because initially, like the month of January, I was like, how is this Canada? There's no snow. I can still see the grass, but all of a sudden, like February started and there was a lot of snow. It got really cold really fast. It's a very sudden change in the weather. More, in fact, in the little corner streets where not the main roads, but the side streets, they have a lot of ice on the sidewalks. And I walk around a lot, so it kind of gets hard.
I would say the weather is just very bipolar, and it goes up and then it comes down, and I'm like, what is this? Like, this isn't fall, like we just need to stick to one, temperature, but it's been like warm, and then it'll get like freezing cold.
So we found the guy who snows it all.
So as we've gone through this winter, we've talked about two things. Cold snap, which is a stretch of days, can run from a few to several days. There's no real technical definition for it, where temperatures are generally running below what you'd expect for the time of the year. So that's a cold snap. One of the other terms that gets mentioned during the winter season is polar vortex. And the polar vortex is a semi-permanent circulation of very, very cold air that is located up, as the name suggests, near the pole. Now, every once in a while, that vortex of very cold Arctic air becomes disturbed. Looks like we're going to be on track for at least an average February as far as the amount of snow goes, if not a little bit above that. So February, pretty snowy month for us. We're sitting at about 30 centimeters this month so far, but I do expect there will be more to come before we wrap up the month. Well, a maritime winter, for me, extends all the way into the month of March, at least the first 2, sometimes 3 weeks. In March, sometimes we get our biggest snowfall event right near the end of the winter season. Looks like temperature is going to be trending towards the colder side, so below normal temperatures to kind of wrap up this winter season here in the Maritime region. And then after that, as we get into April, we'll have to see what the spring brings us.
Jack Sponigal, The Signal, Halifax.
Coming up on The Signal, representing Black women in the world of health and fitness, and
we visit a market where every item has a story.
It's so heartwarming and so powerful.
That's later on The Signal.
Kendra, you spoke with a Black health professional for African Heritage Month?
Yes, her name is Joy Chikwe, and she's all about the importance of representation of Black women in fitness, health, and wellness. Fitness has been a major part of Joy Chikwe's life. She's also an advocate for opening up spaces like these to Black women.
I think some challenges as a Black woman going into like a fitness facility that's where you're surrounded by white women or white instructors would be a lot of different things. It would be like your body image, the way you move, what you wear, your hair. Black women kind of have to have an extra thought of it. They're not just going into a fitness space, they're going to a predominantly white space. So how can I show up and make sure I'm either not playing into the prejudice that they might already have, but also just showing up authentically, whatever that might look like, and feeling comfortable in that space no matter who's around you.
Chikwe co-created a group called the Black Wellness Co. The Co stands for cooperative. Chikwe works with other Black professionals in fitness, health, and wellness. They formed in 2020 at the peak of the pandemic during the conversation around Black Lives Matter.
The more we chatted, the more we realized we all feel like very alone and that we need to come together, offer our resources out to the community, again, for that representation. Our mission has always been to provide our resources and create a sustainable approach to health and wellness within the community.
In Heritage, I really want to bring everybody together to celebrate the
In the past, we've done just group boot camps or fitness boot camps for all levels of fitness, all gender background. Because again, like when you are surrounded by people who have similar experiences than you, that look like you, it's a bit more easier to like show up for yourself and for others and feel more comfortable in that space.
Chikwe says the key to feeling accepted and confident is by finding places and people who foster that environment. One of those places is Move East, not your regular fitness studio. Move East encourages people of color to exercise in a place where they feel safe.
There was definitely a reckoning of realizing our industry, specifically in Nova Scotia, had very poor representation.
She says Black Wellness Co. has been fundamental in educating her and her staff on how to create these spaces.
Really, like, they've been a resource of just in terms of listening and learning from them as they lead the way, I think, in the industry, and really trying to change how marginalized groups are represented.
Kovacs just opened up a second location in Halifax. She credits Black Wellness Co. for educating her on the importance of inclusion.
I feel like Joy has been so transformational in that she's like so confident in how, she brings these opportunities and events and, topics into these spaces. Like she does that in such an authentic way.
Hannah's been amazing, and she's always allowed me to lead and be who I am. And so just finding those places where you can just be who you are and you feel confident and safe.
She predicts what will happen when more fitness facilities become inclusive.
Ideally, when you have a positive experience in a community that is reflective of who you are, that kind of creates a sense of confidence to allow yourself to go into other pots of fitness that might not be just people who look like you.
Vintage buy and sell has taken off in recent years.
Laura Flight went to the South End Vintage Market to ask about the stories and histories of some of these old school finds.
The vintage business is about more than just buying and selling cool old collectibles. The South End Vintage Market hosted 38 vendors. They sell vintage clothing, jewelry, books, houseware, and even handmade goods. The market was filled with antiques, collectibles, and other interesting vintage items. They've had long lives packed with rich histories.
I think one of my favorite things is when I go and I buy something and I put my hands in the pockets. The amount of times I've found something that shouldn't be in there. Finding a pair of really beautiful gloves. That's happened to me on a number of occasions in jacket pockets. And just thinking that someone's hands were inside of these. And maybe that's weird, but I think it's really interesting.
She says more than 1,100 people came through the pop-up market. Sometimes shoppers are looking for something that reminds them of special memories.
The amount of times I overhear, oh my God, your aunt had this and it was like in this cabinet, we could never touch it. Oh my God, it brings me back. The amount of times that families come and they share stories because older generations are able to pass down information about things that they are seeing that's reminding them of growing up and their experiences. It's so heartwarming and so powerful.
Some might be drawn to the story of an item they've never even seen before. Amelia Barnes runs Amelia's Vintage Life. She was selling a teapot with a tale as old as time.
I've come across several of these teapots, and they are marked on the bottom, made in occupied Japan. So that allows me to kind of date this to about the 1940s, 1950s. And, there was tons of beautiful ceramics, and even into the 1970s, really interesting and quirky ceramics coming out of Japan at that time. So I can tell that this was possibly brought home by someone in the military for their family.
The items we buy from small businesses like these vintage markets carry memories and stories from the lives of people who owned them before us. A book on a coffee table or a crystal vase on a mantle tell the stories of our pasts. Antiques have their own past, present, and future, as long as they're not forgotten. For The Signal, I'm Laura Flight.
Now we take you deep into the heart of the Life Sciences Center at Dalhousie. Joe, you visited a museum there?
Yep, it's called the McCullough Museum, Kendra, a hidden gem on campus. We're going to begin our tour of the McCullough Museum with some of the predatory birds found in Nova Scotia, beginning with the owls here, including the great horned, the short-eared, and the long-eared. Next, we're going to look at some other birds of prey, including a sharp-shinned hawk and a northern goshawk, both that are found in Nova Scotia. Genghis Khan is said to have worn an image of a northern goshawk on his helmet. I might be a little loony, but I sure do love these geese. Here we can see the Brant geese and the Canadian geese. Today we're in luck. We get to look at all sorts of ducks. And this concludes our tour of the McCullough Museum. I'm Joe Van Wonderen for The Signal. Today is not just Valentine's Day.
For the next 2 weeks, people across Canada will be taking part in the Push-Up Challenge.
It's a national fitness event to raise awareness about mental health.
We'll bring in our producer, Gabrielle Drapeau.
So, Gabrielle, you and Kendra challenged Kings to complete today's challenge?
That's right. And while some people were more excited than others to drop and give us push-ups in the middle of the day, we definitely got the energy that we were looking for.
So, did you actually hit 100 push-ups?
I'm Kendra Gannon.
And I'm Gabrielle Drapeau. And today we're collecting push-ups for the push-up challenge from students and staff.
Push for better mental health.
1, 2.
Today, Kings is joining the push-up challenge.
Participants take on a total of 2,000 push-ups, representing the 2,000 lives lost to suicide each day around the world.
The challenge encourages people to enjoy physical fitness while completing daily goals. Today, Kings will be doing 100 push-ups.
100 push-ups, representing 10 minutes of mindfulness each day to improve focus and sense of calm.
And I have a clearer understanding of how I should be doing more push-ups. Because those two were hard.
In the time that they did 10, I did 30.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
For The Signal, I'm Kendra Gannon.
And I'm Gabrielle Drapeau.
Quiet on set, you guys.
So, did you get 100 push-ups?
Actually, we got 146.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yep, people were happy to step away from their desks for a few minutes of exercise.
Thanks for watching.
Scroll up.
Thanks for watching our final edition of The Signal. For this video workshop at the University of King's College School of Journalism, I'm Joe Van Wonderen.
And I'm Kendra Gannon. The news never stops. For more on what's going on at King's and beyond, follow The Signal on YouTube or go to signalhfx.ca. Make sure to check out the Park Boundaries podcast out now on Spotify and YouTube.
Happy Valentine's Day.